Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I am Tyler Onove, joined by Joey Nardone, and today we're going to be going over the storylines that are unfolding with the first round of the NHL playoffs. And Joey, before we hop into it, let's talk about what our favorite moments so far from this first round are. So if you want to get us kicked off with that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of big moments so far, but there's also been some comical ones as well. I think just going through quick, the fight of Stamkos and Matthews, pretty crazy how that one folded out, and we'll hit that later more. The two off-the-face goals. There's been a couple fights from some unsuspected characters. So, yeah, I think we're going to hit that as we go along. But I think we'll start off with the face goals, and then we'll talk about those series as well. So if we look at the Islanders first, that series is going Carolina leading 3-2 in that series, and it was a shot that was nowhere near the net, but it hit off of Sebastian Aho, the
one on Carolina,
yes,
not the one on the Islanders.
Confusing that both teams have the guy with the same exact name, but the Carolina Sebastian Aho took a puck to the face. And while it was falling from hitting his face, Brock Nelson deflected it out of midair and hit it in, which was really crazy, impressive to do.
Honestly, yeah, we talked about this a little bit beforehand, but there have been a couple incredible hand-eye coordination goals scored. Before you hop onto your next face goal, the deflection that Matthews had in Game 5 of the Toronto-Tampa series where He took a saucer pass and tipped it into the net in midair. Incredibly impressive. But yeah. I know you're dying to get to your other face goal, so let's hear about Zach Hyman.
Yeah, so Zach Hyman, it was in the Edmonton series where Edmonton lead the Kings 3-2, which I want to hit on more because I think LA has been putting a real fight in. And so Zach Hyman, it was a shot from the point, and Zach Hyman, it would have been a high stick if he hit it with his stick. And he kind of turned his face in the right direction. I don't know if he was just trying to dodge the puck or what, but it hits off of his face and deflects into the goal. So this one wasn't any other deflection. It was just off the face in the net. And
my favorite part about that is him skating up and high-fiving everyone on the bench while he's holding his bleeding mouth. And then, he gets touched up and he's right back out on the ice again.
Didn't miss a shift, which is crazy.
The smile on his face when he was out there for the next face-off tells you everything you need to know about Zach Hyman.
Exactly.
He is there to win this playoff series.
Yeah, so hitting on that playoff series, they've had a lot of games go to overtime so far. 3 games out of the 5 have been in overtime. And I think you have to look for a team like Edmonton who's projected to go pretty far in a lot of people's brackets. You got to remember that wear and tear of guys hitting 30 minutes a night. That's hard to sustain for that long. So it'll be interesting to see how they combat that. LA has been putting the dogfight in. Not that people were expecting LA just to, get swept or anything, but I think going into the series, everyone's talking about the Connor McDavid. Is this the year,
And we talked about this, not just this year, but last year, the whole talk around Edmonton losing in the second round was, can anybody do anything on Edmonton if McDavid and Draisaitl get shut down? And the first 2 games of this series, it was very interesting because LA was able to get more scoring by committee than they have recently. When you had Velarde and Kempe and a whole slew of guys on the Kings who were getting these big goals at big times, and that's what helped them to get into all of these overtimes against Edmonton. But you're seeing the script flip a little bit now. You're seeing Evan Bouchard, who has 10 points for them, or 9, I'm sorry. But for a guy like that to get all of those points on top of Draisaitl and McDavid, who are both in double digits, it's crazy. And, Zach Hyman's putting goals in with his face. So it's like the whole up and down the lineup, these guys are stepping up and they're filling in. And I think last year, if they had been able to fill in those cracks, they would have been able to get a lot farther than they did. And even, the year before that where they lost in the first round. So with Edmonton, I think it's always been a case of, can other players score if McDavid and Draisaitl are being covered? And this is a really weird fun fact, but Draisaitl was on the ice for every single one of the first 14 Edmonton goals of that series. which I believe puts him at second all time. Which it's such a weird stat. Like I don't know who's keeping track of how many straight goals a guy is on the ice for in the playoffs, but it's just one of those things that you see on Twitter and you're like, I can't believe that's real.
I think Edmonton, if they have a team that is a team scoring team, as long as that top line with McDavid and Draisaitl, it's over.
Yeah.
I mean, with McDavid and Draisaitl not on the same line, but like still cooking together, like whatever it is, and their power play unit, of course, is top notch. And I think LA's been handling it well, though. And they were, like you said, doing a lot of team scoring. And talking about team scoring, we're going to look at the Seattle Kraken in their series against the Avalanche. Avalanche reigning Stanley Cup champions, tied 2-2 after 4 games against the Seattle Kraken. And you want to talk about team scoring. 11 players have goals, and they only have 12 goals as a team. So there's only one player with 2 goals, and it's been a high fighting series, And
to your point, now they're also doing this without Jared McCann because of what I'm sure you were about to segue into, which is this Makar hit that got him a 1-game suspension. Puck comes down and it deflects out of play. Makar, in his post-game press conference when they asked him about it, said that he thought that the puck was in McCann's skates, and so that's why he threw that hit. The play obviously was dead. We talked about this, but the Seattle broadcast had a split screen side-by-side of the live of Makar throwing this check on McCann, who is unsuspecting, and a kid holding up the puck in the crowd because it had already been gone that long. And so McCann is going to miss this game tonight, Game 5, which, if you're tuning into this, the Boston Bruins may have already beaten the Panthers and knocked them out of playoff contention because this will probably be posted on Thursday. And the games tonight are Seattle and Colorado and Boston and the Panthers. But if to get back to your point, what do you think about what Colorado has done so far? And do you think that, with the players that they have injured, obviously Landeskog will not touch the ice for the rest of this season, and Makar is going to miss the next game. Do you think that Seattle really has a chance here to knock off the reigning Stanley Cup champions?
I think it'd be huge for Seattle and that team and that city for them if they win this. And I mean, if you look at Philip Grubauer, he's playing really well. Out of all the goalies, there's a goal saved above expected per 60, that stat. He's 7th right now in the playoffs out of all the 16 teams. In first is Igor Shesterkin, second in Ullmark. I don't know how. I don't know who's surprised by that. I'm not sure.
Nobody's surprised by that.
In the top 10, though, you won't see Sorokin for the Islanders.
You know who else you will most definitely not see? Andrei Vasilevsky has an .856 save percentage with 4.33 goals against average. And I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit because we're not there yet, but, man, that is surprising to me. I don't think there's a single hockey fan who is not surprised by Vasilevsky having a 4.33 goals against average.
Yeah, but then you look at Kira Schmid, and he's on fire. And if you're a long-term Rangers fan, you will know that they are really bad against backup goalies. And Lindy Ruff, former assistant coach of the Rangers, I think he knew that it's in the Rangers' DNA that it's like, all right, our top dog isn't doing well. They're lighting him up. Let's put in Akira Schmid, who has, I don't know why he hasn't gotten more games all season. Because anytime he's been out there, he's been great. And I mean, now the Rangers can't solve him. We'll see what Game 5 tells. But even all season, Akira Schmid, for me, was very impressive. And I felt like they never gave him the shot that he really deserved. But I get it. Vitek was your guy when they were on the run. And, I mean, the whole team was just playing so well at that point, though. So it's hard to take that guy out. And then the whole Blackwood situation with he coming into the season, you thought that he was going to be your number one goalie maybe. So, I mean, I get it when you have 3 good goalies. But Akira Schmid, I think now has really proved himself as an NHL goaltender.
I could not agree with you more, but let's stick on the idea of goaltending, and let's talk about Minnesota and Dallas while we're still living in the West.
Yeah.
Because very interesting choice by Bill Guerin or, I guess the coaching staff with Minnesota. They wanted Fleury and Gustafsson to be switching back and forth in the net.
I remember going into this after the first game. They're like, "Yeah, we did it all season. We've been rotating goalies all season, so we're going to be rotating them in the playoffs." And then Marc-Andre Fleury in the playoffs.
He did what, unfortunately, he reverted back to shades of his time with Pittsburgh. They put him in the net, and he let 7 past. And I don't think anyone has ever won a playoff game letting 7 goals in the net in the first 2 periods. I could be wrong. I'm sure there's some crazy games from the 80s or 90s, but that just, you are not going to win, especially against a Dallas team that offensively is strapped to the gills.
Yeah.
Even without Joe Pavelski, Roope Hintz currently leads all players in the playoffs with 11 points right now. In 4 games, he has 11 points. That is almost a 3-point average in the playoffs, which is unbelievable. And, of course, his line mate, Jason Robertson, is not too far behind them. So this is just it's an offensive powerhouse. Gustafsson has held up a lot better than Fleury has, but, man, the way that they're playing right now, I don't see any way that Minnesota is going to climb back into this, especially, the 5-minute penalty on Marcus Foligno for the kneeing major that he got that got him tossed from the game. That obviously killed them, but I don't know. It seems like right now we're seeing a physical team coming up against a team that has far more skill, and it doesn't help that Kirill Kaprizov has been cold as ice this entire series, and
do you think the Kaprizov situation though goes back to them maybe rushing him back from injury? Because that's always a big story in the NHL. They're saying they don't want to rush guys, all that, but Kaprizov did come back, and he's been getting targeted like he's a gazelle and there's 18 lions, because he is just getting dogged every time he's on the ice.
I mean, you want to talk about hatred between fan bases. The first game of that series, when Kaprizov skates in front of the net, Ryan Suter comes up behind him, cross-checks him as hard as he can across the spine. Kaprizov's out for the rest of that game. And then I think it was game 3, I go on Twitter, and there's a video of someone in Minnesota who had taken off their Ryan Suter jersey and put it on over the doormat on the way out of their arena, and it's just hundreds of people walking over the Suter jersey, wiping their feet on it, and it's awesome. That's playoff hockey. I mean, the rivalry, you wonder if it goes back. I mean, it's the former Minnesota North Stars playing the current Dallas Stars. It is one of those series that is so rich with history, and so, these fan bases hate each other. This is a rivalry in the making.
Yeah, I know, and I'm so glad that we get to see it round 1 too. And it is unfortunate. I don't like to see stuff like that behind the play cross checks, and they're not getting called either because it's playoff hockey. And they're like, it's playoff hockey. Officiating's different. But I mean, the guy's getting attacked, and they're trying to defend him. But when you're the star player and you just had a back injury, and a guy 2 minutes into the first game of the playoffs gives you a huge cross check in the back, it's like, what. We kind of talked about the Vegas series.
A little bit.
Yeah, which is, we talked about how much we haven't really been watching it, because it's not the most attractive brand of hockey that the Winnipeg Jets like to play. And those West Coast matchups, of course, also start later. But Winnipeg down 3-1 to Las Vegas. And I think this is Vegas. I don't want to say that they had the lightest matchup going into the playoffs, but I think they might have had the lightest matchup going into the playoffs.
And we talked about this in our recap video, coming into this, how the Jets were red hot, for the first half of the season, and then they really struggled in that second half. And we talked about our main, concern was, can they turn it back on when they get to the playoffs? And, by no means has this been a fully tilted battle between these two teams. Winnipeg is showing up. They're trying. There are no passengers on their boat, but it's just not enough. I mean, Scheifele has been playing through injuries. There's no one who's going to tell you otherwise, other than maybe the media staff who have to cover themselves. But he has not looked like himself. He's been missing time. He's been missing games. And, no one else has really stepped up and really filled his role. And then, aside from just the depth guys not contributing like they have for Vegas, Pierre-Luc Dubois has just taken some boneheaded penalties that have really, cost Winnipeg a lot. To kind of jump off that train and stay on the idea of boneheaded penalties. Let's move over to Tampa Bay and Toronto, and let's talk about Michael Bunting.
Yeah.
So game 2 throws an incredibly stupid head check on Chernak. Chernak is likely done for the series. Michael Bunting's suspension is over. He will be eligible to play Thursday night. Sheldon Keefe, the coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs this morning, saying that he will not be getting his spot back. In fact, he said, and I quote, "Michael Bunting will play again, but not tomorrow." So Matthew Nyes, obviously stepping in place of Michael Bunting, had an incredible defensive play on Tuesday night, pulling a goal off the goal line, keeping the game 4-1 instead of 5-1. Matthews gets the first one. He gets the third one.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what you like to see from a coach, though, in any sort of level of sport, that a guy takes a stupid hit, gets suspended for a couple games, and he comes back, and you're not immediately going to get your spot back if the guy that's taking your place is doing the job. Even if Bunting's been in the whole season, he's been the guy. If he's playing well, then and now Toronto's leading the series 3-1, which I don't know how many people drew that up at the beginning of the playoffs. I think you got to keep what's going well.
I think it's funny that after that first game, Tampa blew them out of the water. The following morning, Sheldon Keefe makes the Toronto Maple Leafs practice mandatory. The entire team shows up, gets dressed, comes out on the ice, and Sheldon Keefe walks out and tells them all to go home.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That, to me, that says that he felt that they showed up the night before, they wasted everybody's time, and to him, that was him wasting their time and telling them to get back into the program and get the message, because you cannot beat a team like Tampa Bay. I mean, both of us predicted Tampa Bay to take this series when we did our recap, and honestly, Tampa Bay, I would not count them out yet. Especially, Matthews sat down with the media today, and he said, for the last 5 years, Game 4 has been the only thing on our mind, because they can get there, they can win 3, but winning that Game 4 has been their kryptonite.
Yeah.
And so now let's talk about Devils and Rangers. 4 minutes into Game 4, Akira Schmid makes 2 incredible saves, one diving to the right of the net, wraparound try, kicks that out too. Who does it find but Jack Hughes, and he's off and running on a breakaway. Devils up 1-0, 4 minutes into the game. What did you see from that game and also Game 3?
I saw an uninspired Ranger team and a team that showed up games 1 and 2 like it was the playoffs. They were ready, and then Games 3 and 4 happened at home, and it was like they were bored. Not that they were bored, but they couldn't solve the 2-2-1 defense that the Devils are playing. It was kind of flipped. The Rangers in Games 1 and 2 were dominating play. I mean, they scored 10 goals in 2 games. They only let up 2. And the Devils couldn't even get into the Rangers' zone, it felt like, in Games 1 and 2. Rangers were dominating offensive possession. Rangers were dominating the whole game. Games 3 and 4, exact opposite. Devils were dominating possession. Rangers couldn't crack their way through the blue line. They tried everything. They couldn't get into that blue line if they tried to pay $100 as a toll. I think the only reason why those games weren't even higher scoring for the Devils because Igor Shesterkin. And the Rangers defense wasn't playing bad, but it was just when you have no offense being generated, and in Game 3, you can't go 0 for 5 on the power play.
Speaking for the Rangers, it's becoming a worrying trend with Panarin that he struggles in the playoffs. All of last season, it felt like he was kind of being carried through the playoffs.
And then he scored the Game 7 overtime winner, and everyone kind of forgot about it.
Exactly.
It was like, oh, it's all right. He showed up when he needed to. But
again, this series, he's ice cold, and Mika Zibanejad as well. The two of them, Chris Kreider has been carrying the offense for this team.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the matchups, Heishier has been locking down Zibanejad. Zibanejad's had when Heishier isn't on the ice, when Zibanejad's on the ice, he's had way more opportunities. And so a lot of props to the Devils in their strategies going into this one, because they've solved a lot of the Rangers' offensive problems. And I mean, if you look at that Rangers team, you see a lot of offensive threats. But if you were shutting down Zibanejad and you were shutting down Panarin, I think you're going to be pretty good. Even though they have the depth, It's the people that shine all throughout the season that were the game changers were Zibanejad and Panarin. And Panarin, I call it Rick Nash syndrome, where you play great in the regular season, and then it's playoff time, and all of a sudden you're the man lost in the streets of New York. Because that was the exact same thing with Rick Nash, is every time they went to the playoffs, Rangers would be having a great season. He'd be doing great, 30, 40 goals a season. And then it happens in the playoffs, and he has like a goal and like 2 assists in 2 series. And it's like, then they're out. And so, it is worrying for the guy that you're paying $11 million a year that he's kind of been quiet. But you also look at your defense. They've been strong. They've not taken too many bad penalties, but they have been taking penalties. But, I think Rangers Devils, it's going to come down to, I think a big part of it's going to be Game 5. Because we saw the Rangers came out, crushed them games 1 and 2. Devils came back with a vengeance games 3 and 4. And now the Rangers at the end of that Game 4, I loved it. It was a shot of the benches, and the Rangers looked dejected and demoralized. And I was like, good, because they should be. And hopefully they're going to be a team that comes out for blood in Game 5.
Like, you get flashbacks to Jacob Trouba in the middle of the season throwing his helmet and screaming at the bench to wake up.
Yeah, and I mean, that was a turning point of the season. After that, they only lost like 6 games in regulation. And so I think they need that wake-up call.
And for me, the key to this series for either team is getting a home win. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. We talked about this a couple days ago, but before Seattle won on Tuesday, the away team had won 11 straight playoff games. What happened to home ice advantage? It seems like it's almost a curse to have, home ice right now.
It's been completely flipped, and I think you saw that last year with the Rangers-Carolina series, where the whole narrative was, can a team win at home? Which is like so strange.
You have people spending $2,000 to go to the Garden to watch the Rangers put 1 goal in the net.
I know
I can't imagine
that's got to hurt your wallet and your feelings a lot. But I want to talk about Boston too. The Boston-Florida series.
What do the Panthers need to do to not lose tonight?
I mean, this is going to be so hard because Bergeron's coming back, which Bergeron has been out for the whole series so far. Arguably their best player. I mean, you could go, that's a team, I mean, they're going to play like their life depends on it because it does, and we'll see how they respond because Florida is a good team, though, that they're an effort team. They will grind it down to bits, and they will grind out goals. And they might not have the prettiest style of play, but they're a team that works really hard. And I think when it comes to situations like these, where it's a must-win situation, I think they will thrive. And on the other hand, Boston, all year, they've just been crushing everyone. And so when you're listening to this, you'll probably know who wins this. But I'm interested to see how Florida comes out. And their goaltending situation. Lyon has been doing well. They did play Bobrovsky. But I think Lyon, it's similar to the Akira Schmid thing where, he's been thrown into it when he had to. And whenever he's been thrown in, he's been doing really well. And it's hard as a young kid to be thrown into the NHL playoffs. And it's like, all right, here's the team that just had the best season ever. Good luck.
Yeah, I have two things about that. First of all, for me, the key to them doing anything tonight is Sasha Barkov. If Alexander Barkov does not start to heat up, and he has 1 game to start to heat up,
it's Barkover.
Yeah, it is. 4 games played, 2 assists. That's it. 2 assists. Does not have a single goal, and he's a -2. He needs, to be a leader for them on the ice. Maybe not scoring 5-6 goals in a series, but he needs to light something up. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk has been carrying this team, and this is nothing new. He's been carrying
them all season.
The whole season. And I thought coming into this series that things might be a little bit different. I think they went 8-1 their last 9 games of the season to come into this, and that's why, when it really came down to it, and Carolina and the Devils were fighting for that last spot for the pleasure of playing Florida, I was very concerned that the Devils were going to get matched up with the Panthers because they were as hot as any team the whole season, those last 9 games. But for a lot of the players, they just can't get through Ullmark, and they can't get through the defense. But the other thing that I just wanted to say was it's very interesting how you can look throughout most of the NHL history, and you can see backups or rookie goalies doing fairly well in the playoffs. And I think it's because teams don't have a book on them yet. I mean,
exactly.
At certain goalies, it doesn't even matter. Like, you could look at 100 hours of Shesterkin's tapes, and it doesn't help. He's still
going to make insane saves.
Yeah, but for a guy like Akira Schmid or last season Jake Ottinger, Calgary had a really hard time solving him. Similar now to the Rangers.
Look at the Penguins. The Penguins Cup run in 2016. Fleury, as we were talking about, similarly now, Fleury wasn't doing good in the playoffs, so they put in his only his second season, Murray, and he was behind Fleury the whole season last time, and nobody had a read on him, and they won the Cup.
Yeah,
and it's like so I don't know. I mean, I think that's what's happening with the Akira Schmid situation because he's a big guy, and I think he's going to have flaws that you're going to be able to point out and weaknesses. It's just the Devils also know they're compensating defensively very, very well. And not that Akira Schmid isn't a good goalie, but they know that it's like, all right, our number one guy isn't in, we're locking up. And it's just so frustrating to watch as a Rangers fan, them just pack the blue line and we can't get through. We'll finish off with one more note. The city of Calgary and the Canadian government just promised Calgary $1.2 billion of taxpayer money for a new stadium. That's right, taxpayer money. $1.2 billion so you could watch the Calgary Flames lose and lose and lose again.
The Saddle Dome will no longer be the Sad Dome. They are going to have a replacement coming. I think it said sometime around 2027, something like that. A $1.2 billion building. Probably it's going to take a little bit to build. But again, thank you so much for joining us on our 8 series recap so far. Again, when this goes live tomorrow, you'll already know if the Florida Panthers have been sent to the golf courses in Sunrise or if they'll be battling another day. And as well, if the Colorado Avalanche make it without Cale Makar tonight.
Yeah, so we have exciting things, and I'm sure we'll be back for more updates as the playoffs continue. And thanks for tuning in for PTV and your coverage of the NHL playoffs. I'm Joey Nardone here for Tyler Onove. Thanks for tuning in.